August 24th, 2015. You made the promise, and I'll quote it here, "No veteran will be forced to fight their own government for the support and compensation they have earned." Yet you are still currently in a legal battle with veterans regarding equal support and compensation to their peers. You have ISIL or ISIS members coming into a reintegration program. You did a backdoor deal with Omar Khadr with not even stepping into the courtroom. So again, my question is, what veterans were you talking about? Was it the ones that fought for the freedoms and values that you so proudly boast about, or was it the ones who fought against? Because honestly, Mr. Prime Minister, I was prepared to be injured in the line of duty when I joined the military. Nobody forced me to join the military. I was prepared to be killed in action. What I wasn't prepared for, Mr. Prime Minister, is Canada turning its back on me. So which veteran was it that you were talking about?
Why are we still fighting against certain veterans groups in court? Because they're asking for more than we are able to give right now. They are asking for more than we... Well, no, hang on. You're asking for honest answers. The old Veterans Charter involved lump sum payments and very little in the way of services. We have significantly invested in services, rehabilitation, support, investments in training, in support for caregivers and families that have gone a long way towards improving the quality of life and outcomes for veterans. And we cannot return to the amount of money that was given before without accounting for the money invested in services for veterans. And what I know from veterans...
Justin Trudeau just returned from his first official visit to India. The trip was supposed to strengthen ties, but it was, by all accounts, a disaster. Now, that's just not me saying that. A Washington Post headline actually read, "Trudeau's India trip is a total disaster." Critics allege that the trip was more of an extended vacation since Trudeau met with almost no Indian government officials, but he did find time to take a few pictures. He didn't exactly get the warmest of receptions. A CNN headline read, "Justin Trudeau snubbed by Indian government on official trip." Prime Minister Modi didn't even meet Trudeau at the airport. Instead, he was met by the junior Minister of Agriculture. In Canada, our Parliamentary Secretary of Agriculture is Jean-Claude Poisson. I don't even know who that is. But if they sent Jean-Claude Poisson to pick me up at the airport, I'd feel snubbed. Normally, when the Prime Minister travels, people only talk about his socks. He sure fixed that. Some people felt he overdid it on the traditional Indian dress, and by some people, I mean everyone. For example, this is how Stephen Harper and Jean Chrétien dressed when they visited India. Justin, he went for a more on-the-nose approach. One Indian headline said that Trudeau was dressed too Indian even for an Indian. It'd be like if Prime Minister Modi came to Canada dressed like this. Crazy. Trudeau's visit was the most embarrassing thing to happen to India since Apu. Trudeau was there to sell Canada, and he did his best to tell them about our country like only our Prime Minister can.
And we celebrated the 100th anniversary of Canadian Confederation.
Actually, it's 150 years old, Justin. Not his best work. He did come back with a trade deal, however. Here he is announcing it.
We're able to announce today over 5,000 new jobs in Canada and over $1 billion of investment in Canada.
Wow, that's pretty good, right? $1 billion invested in Canada, that makes the whole trip worth it.
The Prime Minister actually misspoke there. $250 million to Canada, $750 million to India.
Oops. So India is investing $1 billion in Canada. Canada is investing $750 million in India. Well, same thing. At least he didn't do any embarrassing dancing. At this point, you'd think it couldn't get any worse. Well, you'd be wrong. It was revealed that a Liberal MP had invited a convicted attempted murderer to a reception in India. This man, pictured with Sophie Trudeau, was convicted in 1986 of attempting to assassinate an Indian cabinet minister on Vancouver Island. Some world leaders worry about assassins overseas, but not Justin. He brings his own. So after being ignored, Trudeau was finally getting some attention from the Indian press.
Mr. Trudeau, I want to ask one question. Why did you invite a Khalistani terrorist for your reception?
Eventually, Prime Minister Modi did show up to hug Justin. Of course he did. It was the only way for Modi to get him to go back home. And look at the guy in the back. His hand is already on the car door handle. Hey, Justin, your Uber's here. Time to go. Justin's trip to India seemed like a panicked, desperate attempt to court Sikh voters back home in Canada. I wonder why that was. Justin, if you want to woo Canadian voters, the best place to do that is Canada.
We have breaking news now from Ottawa. The Ethics Commissioner has determined the Prime Minister the breach of a Conflict of Interest Act by attempting to interfere in the so-called SNC-Lavalin affair. We have our Ottawa Bureau Chief and host of the West Block, Mercedes Stevenson, here with more on this. I'm so happy you're here to break this down for us on the News at Noon, Mercedes. First, what does the Ethics Commissioner say the Prime Minister did that was improper?
He says the Prime Minister put pressure on Jody Wilson-Raybould to overrule the decision of the Public Prosecution Office not to cut SNC-Lavalin a deal, and that would be called a deferred prosecution, something we heard a lot about. It allows a company to avoid a criminal conviction and to pay a fine instead, and that is something that Jody Wilson-Raybould had said was inappropriate political pressure, and essentially that is what is found in this Ethics Commissioner's report. He says that the Prime Minister did intervene, that he did try to use his authority to inappropriately pressure the former Attorney General, and that he also directed his staff to do the same, that this took place over a number of months, and that he was asking the former Attorney General to consider what would be partisan political interests. And he goes on to say that that is contrary to Canadian constitutional principles that have been observed since the founding of this country, including things like prosecutorial independence, which means that you don't have politicians interfering in criminal prosecutions, and also the rule of law. Furthermore, he says that if SNC-Lavalin were to have gotten a deal as a result of that pressure, they would have benefited financially. So this is all very interesting because these are a lot of the allegations that Jody Wilson-Raybould made that are now being reiterated in a report from the Independent Ethics Commissioner. In fact, he used to be a Liberal partisan, so this is not somebody who has conservative sympathies. Some thought maybe he wouldn't go that hard on the Liberals. This is pretty no-holds-barred and extensive, and potentially equally as damaging. He's talking about how difficult it was to get information from the government about what happened. And that's something that was really dogging the government during the course of this scandal, because they have presented themselves as open and transparent, that they are the government of sunny ways, and suddenly they shut down, locked down, and were accused of trying to put pressure on the first Indigenous minister to sit in cabinet as a woman as the Attorney General.
The Trudeau government is also trying to make amends for a serious oversight at the new Holocaust monument in Ottawa. A plaque mentioned millions killed, but incredibly, not a word about the 6 million Jews murdered or anti-Semitism. The plaque has been removed, but not before drawing international attention and criticism. More now from CTV senior political correspondent Glenn McGregor.
Visitors to Ottawa's new Holocaust monument are now greeted by an empty concrete wall, after a plaque at the entrance was hastily removed over a glaring omission. The original wording referred to the millions of men, women, and children murdered during the Holocaust, but did not mention the vast majority of them were Jews. After the Prime Minister opened the monument last week,
as we remember the millions killed during the Holocaust, we must acknowledge that during that time, the Jewish community had no safe refuge.
The Conservatives pointed out that similar language wasn't etched onto the plaque.
If we're going to stamp out hatred towards Jews, it's important to get history right.
The plaque has been removed and we will replace with language that reflects the horrors experienced by the Jewish community.
The mix-up is now making international headlines. Trudeau also made the same mistake in his statement in 2016. An error his office later corrected. Visitors to the monument seemed a bit perplexed over the failure to include a reference to Jews on the main plaque.
A major omission, since this was one of the big issues of World War II.
I'm hoping it was simply an an embarrassing, a tragic bureaucratic oversight.
We may live in British Columbia, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Nunavut, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, or Newfoundland and Labrador. But we embrace that diversity while knowing in our hearts that we are all Canadians.
Oh, well, I thought it was kind of rude.
I thought it was ridiculous that the Prime Minister forgot the name of one of the most important provinces in the country.
Let me just start by saying I'm a little embarrassed. I got excited somewhere over the Rockies